Hi, this is Steve Yee, Director of Product Management for SQL Azure. In this walkthrough, we'll take a look at the security features of SQL Azure and how to get started configuring it and protecting your data. We'll cover the business value of SQL Azure Database and provide an overview of its comprehensive security features that make using a cloud database secure yet very easy to use and creates opportunities to extend data for new applications on the web and devices. We'll also go over how to manage SQL Azure Database access through firewall settings. Then we'll go through the process of provisioning a SQL Azure instance and managing login and user access with demonstrations that utilize Transact SQL. By moving your data to SQL Azure, you can free up time and reduce risk associated with managing and maintaining your own SQL Server database servers in-house. Once in SQL Azure, your database is managed for you, and your data is highly available, scalable, and reliable, and can be accessed from anywhere via the Internet. Also, since SQL Azure is based on the same database engine as SQL Server, in most cases few, if any, coding changes will be required to your client applications. In addition, moving workloads to the cloud preserves your investments and ownership in existing applications, yet doesn't impose additional requirements on central IT. Let's take a quick look at the security features provided by SQL Azure. SQL Azure provides encrypted SSL communications between the cloud database and the application, whether it's running on Windows Azure, on-premises, or with a hoster. All communications between SQL Azure Database and the application require encryption at all times. Firewall rules prevent only specific IP addresses or IP address ranges to access a SQL Azure database. Like SQL Server, users and logins can be mapped to a specific database or server-level roles, which can provide complete control, restrict a user to just read-only access of a database, or no access at all. For our sample application, we're going to set up access for a development team. We're going to allow data access through the firewall to the SQL Azure Database instance. We will allow a range of IP addresses to connect to the server, and from the server, we'll create a login and map it to a user. We'll then add the user to the database manager role. This will allow the development team to build the database without having the DBA intervene. This also separates the administrator account on the server from the database level security. Now let's get started. To get started, we'll need to go to the Windows Azure portal at https://windows.azure.com. If you haven't already signed up for an account, you'll need to do that first. By clicking on the New Database Server button, I start a wizard, which allows me to complete the provisioning process. When you sign up for services using Microsoft SQL Azure, the provisioning process creates a SQL Azure server, a database named master, and a login that is the server-level principal of your SQL Azure server. That login is similar to the server-level principal SA or system administrator for an instance of on-premises SQL Server. First, I supply an admin login name. Then I'll add a strong password and retype the password. Click Next, and now we'll need to set a default firewall rule. This will allow you to access the server from your location if you're developing locally or using tools such as SQL Server Management Studio. Type the rule name and select the IP address from the window. This is your current IP address. Once you've filled this in, click OK. In the Firewall Rule window, you will see an option to allow other Windows Azure services to connect. Click the checkbox and notice that the IP addresses are added automatically. Selecting this allows other cloud services in the Windows Azure platform to access the SQL Azure database. With the firewall rule added, click Finish. We have successfully created the SQL Azure instance. In many cases, you need to allow a range of IP addresses to communicate with SQL Azure. You can accomplish this by adding a firewall rule and specifying the range of IP addresses. Back in the Windows Azure portal homepage, we click on our subscription and select the server we just created. The center pane shows the status of your server. Click on the Firewall Rules button and the window will extend to show you the full list of rules. Click Add. The Add New Firewall Rule box opens. Provide a name and IP address range. And after you click OK, it's that simple. Now our company's IP addresses are allowed through the firewall. The next step will be to set up logins and users for database administration and data access. Now we're going to create logins to access the database. Click Manage from the portal with the master database selected. This will open the database management portal. We'll supply the password for the server we just set up. Notice that we are connecting to the master database and that we're connecting using the admin account we created when we provisioned the SQL Azure subscription. We can also accomplish this via the SQL Server Management Studio tools. In SQL Azure, the master database keeps track of logins, including which logins have permissions to create databases or other logins. You need to be connected to the master database whenever you create, alter, or drop logins or databases. The master database also has the sys.sql logins and sys.databases views that you can use to view logins and databases. Once logged into the database management portal, click New Query, and in the new window, type in commands to create a login. Click Execute. Now let's check the sys logins view. We verified the login exists, so we are ready to proceed with database level permissions. I will create a database for the development team to access. And here I'll create the database using the create database command in T-SQL. SQL Azure and SQL Server come with predefined server and database level roles that will be useful in providing proper access rights to users and developers. Use the following link to learn more. With the server level permissions in place, we need to switch our connection to the database the development team will be working on. I'm going to log into the new database through the portal. In order to connect to a SQL Azure database using the logins you created, you must first grant each login database level permissions by using the create user T-SQL commands. I'll type the syntax, so click Execute. Now with the user and login created, we can provide the user with permissions to create tables on the database. By using this role, we limit the dev team's abilities to create and drop tables. The DBA still controls the database and user logins for the server instance. So let's use the stored procedure sp add role member. We'll add the user_dbdev_user to the admin role. This will allow the dev team to create tables in the database we just created. With that, we now have our security set up for our development team to start development on a SQL Azure database. We have now completed the security setup for our organization. To see if we did it correctly, we can try connecting to the SQL Azure database via SQL Server Management Studio, or SSMS. Opening SSMS, we are prompted for our credentials. I paste the server name and type the login we just created, Expense App 1. Next, provide the password and click on Options to specify the correct database. Under the Connection Properties tab, type the database name and click Connect. Selecting the database folder on the left, I open a T-SQL script that creates tables in the database. If the query executes, we've set up the access correctly. As you can see, it works and the development team is all set. So, in this session, we've discussed the benefits of SQL Azure, talked about the fundamentals of SQL Azure security, and walked through a basic setup. Thanks for watching, and please visit SQLazure.com for the latest information and additional resources, as well as the links here for more information on SQL Azure security guidelines.